Now, I can describe the symptoms of the God complex very, very easily. So the symptoms of the God complex are, no matter how complicated the problem, you have an absolutely overwhelming belief that you are infallibly right in your solution. People who, in the face of an incredibly complicated world, are nevertheless absolutely convinced that they understand the way that the world works. The world is simply far too complex to understand in that way. Now, I'm not trying to deliver a nihilistic message here. I'm not trying to say we can't solve complicated problems in a complicated world. We clearly can, but the way we solve them is with humility, to abandon the God complex and to actually use a problem-solving technique that works. And we have a problem-solving technique that works. This baby, it's a human body. It evolved. What is evolution? Over millions of years, variation and selection. Variation and selection. Trial and error. Trial and error. And it's not just biological systems that produce miracles through trial and error. And you could use it in an industrial context. So let's say you wanted to make detergent. Let's say you're Unilever and you want to make detergent in a factory near Liverpool. How do you do it? Well, you have this great big tank full of liquid detergent. You pump it at high pressure through a nozzle. You create a spray of detergent. Then the spray dries, it turns into powder, it falls to the floor, you scoop it up, you put it in cardboard boxes, you sell it at a supermarket, you make lots of money. How do you design that nozzle? Turns out to be very important. Now, if you ascribe to the God complex, what you do is you find yourself a little god. You find yourself a mathematician, you find yourself a physicist, somebody who understands the dynamics of this fluid, and he will or she will calculate the optimal design of the nozzle. Now, Unilever did this, and it didn't work. Too complicated. Even this problem, too complicated. But the geneticist, Professor Steve Jones, describes how Unilever actually did solve this problem. Trial and error. Variation and selection. You take a nozzle, and you create 10 random variations on the nozzle. You try out all 10. You keep the one that works best. You create 10 variations on that one. You try out all 10. You keep the one that works best. You try out 10 variations on that one. You see how this works, right? And after 45 generations, you have this incredible nozzle, looks a bit like a chess piece, functions absolutely brilliantly. We have no idea why it works. No idea at all. But the moment you step back from the God complex and you say, let's just try a bunch of stuff, let's have a systematic way of determining what's working and what's not, you can solve your problem. 10% of American businesses disappear every year. That is a huge failure rate. It's far higher than the failure rate for, say, Americans. 10% of Americans don't disappear every year, which leads us to conclude, American businesses fail faster than Americans, and therefore American businesses are evolving faster than Americans. But it's this process of trial and error that explains this great divergence, this incredible performance of Western economies. It didn't come because you put some incredibly smart person in charge. It's come through trial and error. And Archie Cochrane understood this as well as anybody. There's this one trial he ran, and after the trial had been running for a little while, he gathered together all his colleagues around the table, and he said, well, gentlemen, we have some preliminary results. They are not statistically significant, but we have something, and it turns out you're right, and I'm wrong. It is dangerous for patients to recover from heart attacks at home. They should be in hospital. And there's this uproar, and all the doctors start pounding the table and saying, we always said you're unethical, Archie. You're killing people with your clinical trials. You need to shut it down now. Shut it down at once. And there's all this huge hubbub. Archie lets it die down. And then he says, well, that's very interesting, gentlemen, because when I gave you the table of results, I swapped the two columns around. It turns out your hospitals are killing people, and they should be at home. And the reason he would do that kind of thing is because he understood. It feels so much better to stand there and say, in my own little world, I am a god, I understand everything. I do not want to have my opinions challenged. I do not want to have my conclusions tested. It feels so much more comfortable simply to lay down the law. Cochrane understood that uncertainty, that fallibility, that being challenged, they hurt. And you sometimes need to be shocked out of that.